Hey, in this video, I want to talk about Nintendo Switch and some of the concerns I have about the console. So the first concern I have for the console is not talking about specifications about the hardware. Kind of leaves the stakeholders blind to what estimated value of the console. This is important because I believe that hardware, like raw specs, correlates to value. And if you don't know the specs or specifications within the device, then you can't really generate what kind of value it has in the market. So with Nintendo's Switch being so expensive with the accessories and all that, and the console itself is $400, the Joy-Cons are together, they're $100. I mean, it's $400 for the console. The Joy-Cons are $100, and then this is 80, this is 90. And with such high prices, you need to justify that by talking about the specifications within the hardware, especially with the expensive stuff. So what's in the controller that's so expensive? Let's look inside that. What is in there? What kind of rumble is in there? What kind of device is in there? What's making it so high? Like, these are questions that gamers should know in order to reassure them that what they are getting is at the right price point. And that's one of the concerns I have. And also, this is also important with multi-platform games. So if you're going to have multi-platform games, it's good to know the specifications to see where it is with the competition and see if potential multi-platform versions will be dumbed down or would they meet at the median. So usually when developers make multi-platform games, in the category of hardware, they try to make those games the same as possible. So with the consoles, they try to make all the console versions the same. With the handhelds, they try to make all the handhelds the same. And with the PCs, they try to make all the PCs the same. So like if you're talking about mobile gaming, you try to make all the mobile versions the same. So the same thing applies here. So when you're talking about specifications, it kind of tells the gamer, the consumer, or stakeholder where does that particular device fall in, and does that price point justify it. So think of this like when the PlayStation Vita was launched, the 3DS lowered in price because the specifications justified that price point. So at that price point, you got a better hardware for the PlayStation Vita, while the 3DS was way inferior. So therefore, that price had to go down because of the specifications justified that price point. So with Nintendo Switch, with such high prices, you need to talk about the specifications within the devices or individual hardware or pieces of hardware or peripherals of why the hardware is priced at that particular price point. Like, you need to talk about the specifications. And that's one of the major concerns. Another one is, since this is being advertised as a console first and the handheld second or a portable device second, how many Joy-Cons can be connected to the Switch at once? So if it's going to be a console first, that means you need to have at least 4 Joy-Cons connected at once, because usually when you have a home console, minimum is usually 4 controllers usually can connect. So that means 4 pairs of Joy-Cons should be able to connect. So that's about 8 Joy-Cons, especially when they have like the motion sensor and all that stuff. So 8 should be compatible. Like, generally that's the minimum. I can't really see people not accepting less than that. 2 might be pushing it, but 2 would be like borderline. I think you might be splitting hairs, so you might be 50-50 with the community, but 4 people would be satisfied. So if you're going to sell it as a console first, how many Joy-Cons or pair of Joy-Cons can be supported at once? Because since it's a console first, that means local multiplayer or stuff like that should be incorporated. So, and it doesn't count when each Joy-Con can be a controller. I'm talking about when you use both Joy-Cons as one controller, and how many Joy-Cons in pairs can it support. So I'm assuming 8 would be the top number, or the minimum number, or the maximum number of players. And maybe 4 would be, it'd be pushing it, but 4 might split the community. But if you're gonna sell it as a console first, then the home, playing at home, should have at least the baseline standard for what most consoles do. So right now, 4 is the threshold. With 4 controllers or default controllers connecting to the console at once, I can see most people accepting that. But considering that it seems to be more of a portable hardware or a portable device than a home device or like a home console, I highly doubt that there's going to be more than 2 Joy-Cons. I think 4 might be pushing the hardware considering Nintendo's history, but I think 8 should be 8 Joy-Cons. So like that's like 4 people. So it should have at least 4 people using 2 Joy-Cons each, playing on the console, being able to play on at home, like with it docked. Keep in mind, the official Nintendo website states that it supports up to 8 controllers, but with the previous generation, the Wii U supported up to 5 controllers, 4 to 5, but it didn't mean default controller setups. So I'm wondering if it has to support a combination of the Switch Pro with Joy-Cons, or can it support up to like 4 paired up Joy-Cons? So that would be an interesting thing to clarify, because since the last generation didn't mean 4 to 5 default controller inputs, what does this mean? So on the website, it does say up to 4 players, up to 4 controllers, but it doesn't specify up to 8 Joy-Cons, because then that would mean 4 players using the default gamepad, which is the Joy-Cons. The Switch Pro is an alternative controller. It's not the default controller. So that's what I'm trying to emphasize here. So generally speaking, it should be the default controller up to 8 players. But in Nintendo's case, this is not always true. So this is what I have concerns over. So what does the 8 controllers mean? So that's like my second one. What else do I have here? My third concern is now allowing the docking station to have a drive bay is a missed opportunity for a better console experience. So with this one, if you had like a hard drive bay, you can possibly take advantage of that, like where if you're gonna use it as a home console, you don't have to worry about the flash drives or like the USB sticks, or like what's it called, the micro SD cards. And when you pop it into the docking station, then it can take advantage of the hard drive attached to the docking station. And I'm talking about like not like a USB, like an external hard drive, but something that goes inside the docking station kind of thing. So it's like concealed within the docking station. So you wouldn't see a hard drive sticking out. You just see the docking station. But then it would be like a compartment, kind of like the AverMedia Game Capture 2, where you could put the hard drive within the device itself, and it's like it's concealed within that device. So I would say the same thing should happen, or should have happened with, well, I guess it can still happen, but what I'm saying is it should have happened like with the console announcement, that a hard drive bay should have been within the docking station. So therefore, when you dock it in like a home console, it should have that space there, and utilize that, and maybe use that to transfer data between the SD card. So when you're on the go, you can get whatever games you want, and then plop them and take them off from the hard drive from the docking station and go. So therefore, you don't have to always connect online and download that way. You can, but I'm assuming when you have the hard drive physically there with the data and all that game saves and game data there, it would be faster to transfer data back and forth. So this would be more like a convenience thing, especially if you want to have like big hard drives. And plus, since it's a docking station, you could have a 3.5 hard drive. So it would be a desktop hard drive in the docking station. And that would be amazing. So therefore, you can have like 3, 5, 6 terabytes of memory right there. Because since it's a docking station, it's not going to be moving anywhere. And since like a docking unit or docking station is not very big, it can be the size of the hard drive itself or something. Like, there's so many ways you could have utilized that. And especially since the actual device itself is small, it would have been nice to have like a standard desktop hard drive you can just plop right in, or maybe even have a dual port where you can have the laptop hard drive or the desktop hard drive compatible within the docking station. So I think that was a missed opportunity there, because it could have been working wonders, because you would have so much space and it would just be dedicated to the Nintendo Switch. My fourth concern is not having the docking station to be a Switch hub to access game saves from a removable hard drive on the docking station. That would allow more freedom within the home. So if Nintendo Switch docking station had a hard drive bay, that hard drive bay could have been utilized over the home network to connect to the Switch device itself to either stream content from the hard drive or even remotely transfer data back and forth. So I'm implying here that the docking station could have been like a hub. So that would be nice. Like if you had the docking station as some kind of like home hub where you can see all the game saves and you can transfer the data back and forth within the home. So even though it's portable, you don't necessarily have to go outside, but if you want to remove yourself from the TV what the docking station is attached to, and you want to go somewhere else, maybe just outside, and you want to play a certain game, maybe you don't have to download it. You can just stream it from the hard drive and stream it to your device and start playing that way. Like, this is not too much of a strong point, but this is more of a convenience thing, because like if you're utilizing a docking station, you could do so much more with that, especially if the docking station is going to be expensive. You got to utilize that. You got to justify that price point. Remember the specifications. If it's just a piece of plastic with ports, it's not worth that much. So it shouldn't be too high of a. It shouldn't be costing too much to buy one. But if it's expensive, there must be something inside that docking station that's doing wonders or something. And what else do I have under this point? And this would mean that the docking station would have some kind of basic UI implemented. So therefore, when the console's not docked in, when the console's not physically inside the docking station or docking unit, whatever they call it, you need some kind of interface. So when the unit's not inside it, you need to find a way to interact with the data inside the hard drive. If they had a hard drive bay and you installed a hard drive inside that hard drive bay into the docking unit, you would need some kind of basic UI to manipulate that data without the Switch unit inside the docking station, is what I'm saying here. My fifth concern is that if the smartphone app is utilized for like chats, creating lobbies, talking to friends, this can overly complicate a simple process, because you're in the console market. The console market is essentially a dumbed down version of a PC. A PC is not, I'm not saying that PC is overly complicated, but a PC is highly customizable. And with a console, it simplifies everything and it's just a plug and play ideology of a console. So when you're playing on a console and you're saying you want to have online features, you want to centralize that features. You want to just be, you want a lot of the UI to take care of the heavy work. So when you want to separate the two with another device independent from the unit that you buy, it can overly complicate the process. And if you're going to support iPhones, or like not iPhones but mobile phones, then you're going to have to worry about certain updates with phones and whether it's compatible or not, or whether that reached an update, or maybe something major happened on the phone that Nintendo has to keep up with. So there's multiple operating systems you have to worry about now. What else do I have here? So the player would probably need 2 devices to achieve the same thing that other gaming devices do with the same device. Or like you would need 2 devices to achieve what other gaming consoles can do with the actual gaming device can do. Like, how do I put this? Basically, if you want to, let's say for example, want to talk with your friends online, I'm hoping that you don't need an iPhone app, or not iPhone app, but like a mobile app, to talk to your friends in tandem of the gaming unit. So like you might be playing at home, since it's a home console first. So I'm looking at the home console play style is taking more precedence than all the other styles, because it's touted as a home console first. So when you're playing at home and you want to use voice chat, and just kind of leading into my next one, but the Joy-Cons don't really have a headphone jack. So therefore, how would voice communication work? And you probably would need a second device, kind of similar to how if you were using the Pro Controller for the Wii U, you still need the default gamepad, or the Wii U tablet. Like the gamepad looks like a tablet to connect the headset to while you're using the Pro Controller. So I think the same thing might be happening here. You might need to use your phone in order to communicate with people online with your Nintendo Switch at home, because when you dock the Nintendo Switch, you remove the Joy-Cons. When you want to use the Joy-Cons, you remove the Joy-Cons, and now it's like a Wii Remote kind of thing, like Wii Nunchuck and Remote. And what I have seen online is that there's no headphone jack on those things. The headphone jack is actually on the unit itself, and the unit itself will most likely be near the TV or display, whatever you're using, like a TV monitor or whatever. And with that said, you probably need 2 devices to achieve what other consoles would do with the hardware that the console comes with. So if we're talking about the PS4 or the Xbox One, when you want to talk with the Xbox One, you connect the headset to the controller. You want to talk on the PS4, you connect the headset to the controller. But then the Joy-Cons, they have no headphone jack. So when you want to play independently from the headphone jack at home, since it's touted as a home console first, the home experience is kind of hindered because it's more of a portable device, despite it being touted as a home console first. So the online feature set may be hindered because the Joy-Con doesn't support that. And I think the Pro Controller may not support that as well, because as of right now, I'm pretty sure, I don't have the controller on me right now, but the Wii U Pro Controller does not have a headphone jack. So if I wanted to use it doesn't have one. I just mentioned that earlier, yeah. So it doesn't have one. So, and it looks like the Joy-Cons don't have one as well. So if the home experience, the home play style takes more precedence than all the other styles, like the tabletop or the portable or like the handheld play style, therefore the home experience is more hindered, and you can't really talk. You need 2 devices for that. What else did I say? Oh, and the thing too is like you may need to fully charge 2 devices. You may need to fully charge 2 devices as well as the Joy-Cons, Joy-Con controllers. So you may, if you have to use a cell phone and your cell phone needs charging, you need to make sure that your cell phone needs charging on top of your Joy-Cons if they get charged independently. I'm assuming they do. I'm not sure how that works because I'm assuming they have batteries since they're wireless. So you need to be charged somehow. So you need to make sure if it's your phone app, if your phone app has is the only means to communicate, that means you need to make sure that your phone is charged and as well as the Joy-Cons individually are charged. So you need 3 devices to make sure they're charged in order to communicate online. Otherwise, you can't even communicate. And I find that weird. If this is true, and they might have a wireless option, but I did not see that in the specifications because again, Nintendo does not really talk about the specifications. I kind of ruined the last one because I did mention that the headphone jack is not um, the headphone jack is on the Joy-Cons. But that kind of bleeds in with my 6 point. So I'll just leave it as 5 points. But what else do I have? And before moving on to my 6th point, if the Joy-Cons are going to be in your hand, and you're going to also be using your cell phone as well, if the cell phone app is required to communicate to people online while playing, the Joy-Con also takes up your hands. Like, doesn't free up a hand or two. So basically, whether you're using the Switch unit as a screen itself with the Joy-Cons on its side, or using the Joy-Cons independently while the Switch is docked in the home play style or home TV or home setup play style, the Joy-Cons are still going to be taking most of your free hands. So it would be interesting, how would that work and how would that be convenient? And on top of that, how would a casual player get into this? And especially if you're targeting younger kids, how would a younger kid or like child would get into this, especially using a cell phone? So if they had to use something like expensive like a cell phone, like mommy's cell phone or daddy's cell phone, most of the cell phones are $1,000. So most cell phones, technically speaking, would roughly be around $1,000. When you're on contract, you don't really feel that price point, but technically speaking, you're using $1,000 piece of the hardware or device to use as a communication device while online. If this is true, keep in mind this is theoretical, and how would this be convenient if the Joy-Cons take up your hands, and especially if the Joy-Cons can be utilized in the Wii U kind of play style as well. I mean, not Wii U, Wii play style, where you can move the Joy-Cons around, and that motion of play can be implemented in video games. So therefore, you need a lot of space for some of this. You may be able to sit down and play, but some of them seem like you might have to stand up and play. So how would that work? I guess the last point is more about, is a Switch Pro controller going to have a headphone jack? Because the Joy-Cons don't support a headphone jack when docked. So how will a user communicate online if the Switch will most likely be near the display or the TV? So like, I'm basically saying, like, is the Switch Pro have a headphone jack? And if it doesn't, it's going to cause a problem because the Joy-Cons don't have a headphone jack. The headphone jack, as I'm aware of right now, I don't have the website in front of me, but the only headphone jack is on the unit itself. And if you're playing at home and the play style that's more prominent, or the play style that's more taking more precedence because of Nintendo's advertising it that way, the home experience is the most hindered experience out of all the play styles. Because especially if you want to talk online, and if online is going to be a major thing, you got to make that a seamless transition. Why overcomplicate a process that's very simple with the other devices? Again, if you want to talk online, you just plug it into the headset on the other 2 devices. Why make your console more complicated than it needs to be, especially if you're going for a more casual audience? Again, it's a little frustrating, but this is what they do. I also want to mention that since controllers nowadays are wireless, players tend to be more further away from the console than before. So before consoles or gamepads or default gamepads were wired, but now since wireless is a thing now, the console can be further away from you. So when I'm playing on my other consoles, like the Xbox One or PlayStation 4, I'm using the controller as the using the controller headphone jack. I can potentially use a USB port on the console itself, but I'll be tethered more closer to the console, and that's not it's not that convenient. So it would be nice to have the headphone jack on the controller, so therefore I don't have to be so tethered to the console. It may still work with it just on the Nintendo Switch, but keep in mind it's a lot more convenient, especially with the wireless generation, to be a lot further away, especially if you're gonna have Wii controls. So meaning that if I'm gonna be tethered to the console, I have to be able to be. I must have enough space in between the TV and myself in order to accommodate the motion controls if I'm playing a particular game that requires the motion control schema or scheme. So yeah, that's basically it. So yeah, like it's a little bit confusing, but I think it might still work. But it's a concern because a lot of the controllers or some of the control scheme may be using motion controls, and you need space for that, and you don't want to be tethered to the console at the same time. So I want to know how that would work. Like, this is a concern. I'm not saying it's like a problem, but it's just a concern, meaning that this is what I thought of in my head, theoretically speaking, that this could be a potential problem. Keep in mind the console's not released yet, so therefore I don't know if this is a real problem or not, or any of the problems or any of the concerns I mentioned. I'm not sure if they're real concerns unless the console has been launched and I actually play the console physically. So keep that in mind. That's pretty much my points. I may have more concerns, but this is what I've noticed so far. And I probably won't be able to make much more videos after this one. But it seems like I stated before, the Nintendo tends to make poor decisions. And especially the targeted audience they tend to want to capture. If they're capturing a more casual audience, you have to simplify the experience. Why complicate the communication? If this is true, why complicate the communication? Like, and especially why use your phone? I find that the weirdest thing. So you're paying for an app to talk to people on your phone, if you have a phone, you're most likely paying to use your phone as a phone. So like you're paying two services on the phone, one to communicate to people on your gaming console, and one to just communicate to people in general. Because usually any communication app on the phone is usually free. I don't see too many paying like apps you need to pay. If you do, it's a one-time fee kind of thing. It's not a subscription. So if you do have to pay for an app, it's because it's the one-time fee. Unless it's like a service that's also available on something else, but you can use your phone. So like you pay independently, and it's independent from that. It doesn't need the app. It doesn't need the phone app to use a service. Think of it like Netflix. You don't need the phone app to watch Netflix. It's just universal. So when you pay for your subscription for Netflix, it's independent from that. But you can also use the mobile app to watch your Netflix. But in Nintendo Switch's case, it seems like it's mandatory to have the phone app in order to communicate. It's not like you use the phone app as an alternative. It seems like it's the only way. It's like the default option to communicate. And that's like the difference. This may have been a little bit scattered because it's just something I just thought of, I just wanted to talk about. But as of right now, it seems like Nintendo Switch may have a few problems, especially if if the home play style is taking more precedence, it's going to be a little bit more hindered. So, yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about. TX3 out.